Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are recapping all Week 14 action at the Biomageddon week, and we will first cover a little bit of league news here. So, we've got some potential season-ending injuries that we can talk about, and we've got NFL coach. We can talk about his coaching search as well. But first, Jeff, let's talk about your NFC South division rival, the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr has a broken hand. Looks like he'll probably miss the last 4 weeks of the year. What do you think they do from here? Do you think they go back to Ritter, who was a healthy scratch, or do they go with another quarterback here?
So I think you got Desmond Ritter on your mind here. It's Spencer
Rattler. Sorry.
Yes. I don't really know what they do here. I think their season, for all intent and purposes, are over because they're now without Olave, they're without Raheed Shaheed, they're without Derek Carr. Any hope that they had to get that momentum from the beginning part of the season is just over now. They're probably better with starting Spencer Rattler to kind of see what he is and see if he's developed at all since the beginning of the year, but he didn't look great at the beginning of the year. He had one good start where they did win, I believe, and then he fell right off of a cliff. I think they would love nothing more than Spencer Rattler to be good so they could move off of Derek Carr, who has injury guarantees as well. So the Saints are going to be very cautious now to make sure that Derek Carr can pass his physical in the spring at this point.
Well, they also have Jake Haener, who came in relief for Derek Carr when he was sidelined. This is only his second year in the league. He was a fourth round pick in 2023's draft. So he's someone that could potentially play now going forward. And I think he went to the same school as Derek Carr too, who was supposed to be an understudy to him. So we'll see who it is between Haener and Rattler. I think Rattler has a higher upside but lower floor. It just depends on where the Saints view themselves at this point in the season. There's still a chance they could potentially win the division, but it's less and less likely each week.
Yeah, I completely agree there. But I think the Saints season, we can put a cap on it now. It wasn't looking very bright before this, and I think any of that light has been completely extinguished from their season.
Another team whose light was extinguished here is the Raiders. Another quarterback injury. This one to Aiden O'Connell. He got a bone bruise in his knee. It seemed like it was going to be worse than that because it put him in an air cast and carted him off the field. Apparently, he tried to come back, and they told him no. He's possible to play Monday. That's something to keep an eye on, or they can shut him down. Either way, I think we all expect the Raiders to move in a different direction at quarterback in the offseason, but we'll keep an eye on Aiden O'Connell. Without him there, I think they're the ones that have Desmond Ritter, so they will be probably struggling if Ritter's the one that ends up starting.
Yeah, and I think the better storyline for Monday night is Desmond Ritter going back to the Falcons, facing his former team. Revenge game. So
I don't have high hopes for that one.
No, but I think that's the better storyline than O'Connell starting that matchup. So I think football is hoping for Desmond Ritter to start this lackluster game now. Like, who would have thought the Falcons would have been down here?
Yeah, the Falcons have their own issues they have to clean up. But we can move on to your team. The Jonathan Brooks re-injury of his knee is looking like an ACL in the same knee that he already had a tear in before. Probably not super likely he plays most of next season, maybe at all. depending on how fresh they want him to be coming into 2026, big damper on dynasty for most people. Obviously, if you're in redrafts, you should have already cut him by now because he's not coming back. But it's going to be the Chuba Hubbard show for the next year, looks like.
Yeah, who would have thought that, though, going into the year? Everyone assumed Jonathan Brooks would overtake him, and I think he was like the 4th dynasty pick in most dynasty drafts. So you lose 2 years of Jonathan Brooks. So congratulations on taking the first running back off of the board.
I'm glad I mostly got Trey Benson.
Yes and no, right?
Yeah.
But Jonathan Brooks could come back in 2025. I expect him to be out at least 9 to 10 months, which has him at September to October next year. So I think that it lends into questioning like what kind of surgery he got last year, what kind of surgeon he had, like, because re-tears don't happen that often. Like the only one that I remember in recent memory is Odell Beckham, and that's because his surgeon messed up the first one. So something had to have happened here or went wrong here, because in theory the ACL should be even more intact the second time around. So hopefully he gets the medical treatment that he needs and is able to resume his career. But in the interim, Chuba Hubbard is the RB1 there. And I would say for 2025, Hubbard's probably a top 15 back entering 2025.
Yep, I would agree with that. What do you make of the Bill Belichick to UNC news that seemed to go back and forth multiple times?
Rumors. I'm still waiting for multiple sources to confirm this, but there is a rumor out there that Bill Belichick is going to accept the UNC job. I don't know if he wants to leave the NFL or not, so I guess his motivation is a little bit in question for me here. So I don't know what that'll mean going forward. Like, if he accepts this job, can he not accept any NFL jobs? Can he leave and go to the NFL just really easily? Like, I don't know what the college rules are on that. But apparently, like, his son will be part of the coaching staff and potentially even take over as head coach after Bill Belichick leaves. Like, I think they're working out all those details right now. The only thing I can't see is Bill Belichick recruiting every year, because this is not a team where you could build a dynasty where you could have a Brady for X amount of years. This is a turnstile where players will play 2 to 3 seasons and they'll move on to the NFL. So I don't know if this is really built for a Bill Belichick system.
I don't know if anyone's talking about this at all, Jeff, but that's where Drake May played college ball. So I don't know if this is some elaborate troll against the Patriots or
He
what.
seems fine with them now.
It's just strange that they moved on from him, got someone from UNC as their quarterback, and now Bill is strongly considering becoming their head coach, running their program, making it into a NFL pipeline school to develop players and get them up into the NFL. I know where we are right now. The latest thing I've seen is from Albert Breer that they kind of have a tentative agreement, but North Carolina needs to get an emergency board of trustees meeting going to approve it, and that meeting hasn't happened yet. So, and that was as of, I think, 6 or 7 minutes ago.
The last thing I had heard from Adam Schefter was there's a few items on both sides that need to be worked out. So seems like that board meeting is one. And I wouldn't even have an idea what they have to work out with Bill Belichick. Maybe he's not the recruiter, just the coach, where they hire a recruiter for him. I can't imagine him being in his 70s, flying around the country recruiting 20-year-olds.
It's just going to be one of those guys going, listen, are you going to come to the UNC or what? You coming to Chapel Hill or what? This is going to be his pitch to everybody, to everyone.
We will see where Bill Belichick goes. We will see where all the coaches end up in the coaching carousel at the end of the season. But we have week 13 to recap, we have 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. We have 5 weeks left of football after this as well. So this was the last Bye-Mageddon week where we had 6 teams on bye. And so the Thursday night game was 2 teams on full rest, and it was the Packers at the Lions. And before I say my piece on this matchup, Alex, I will let you give us a rundown of this matchup, and then I can run down Dan Campbell a little bit.
Well, I appreciate the Detroit Lions' boldness in most of their calls. I think we both agree that going for it on fourth down on your own 30 was the riskiest that he did.
And
That
it
I can
failed.
see. Well, no,
And it failed.
I mean they ended up winning
Okay.
against a tough team. I understand why they wanted to be aggressive, and I think that this Lions team, all he's doing is showing he believes in the team. And I think all of the guys respond to it. And if you look at the players, they always look energized on the sideline and on the field. So I really like Dan Campbell. I think he's playing the aggressive style of football that most teams should be doing at this point. I know there's a lot of stats driven people that want to do data analytics, and sometimes it works, but you can't quantify the motivational aspect of it, and no one gets their players motivated more than Dan Campbell.
Absolutely. And no one runs their team through a wall so much that half the team is now on injured reserve for the season as well. So he almost lost Laporta in junk time. He lost Hutchinson in junk time. He's too aggressive. He plays like an underdog, except for the team hasn't been an underdog for 3 seasons. And he needs to play like he has faith in his team's defense as well. So he's not doing that currently. You don't see top teams like the Chiefs doing this because top teams get eliminated for doing stuff like this, and you'll see it in the postseason. It will happen. And he'll be sitting at home watching the conference and the Super Bowl championships again because of his over aggressiveness. And unless he starts coaching with a little more brain and a little bit less brawn, then he's never going to get over the hump. And the other thing with Campbell is they're paying all these guys. They're paying Goff. They're paying St. Brown. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you cannot pay guys anymore. Or you're going to have to bring in new guys to take their place. And this team is not going to look the same in a year and a half or 2 years. So we'll see what type of coach Dan Campbell is when the team cycles around. But yeah, they're willing to run through a wall for him right now, but wait till the business of football starts kicking in around here.
Well, on the other hand, you have the Green Bay Packers who could only complete 12 passes, and they did not go to Jaden Reed or Romeo Dobbs or
Nope. Dobbs, I think, was
any of the
out,
running
was
back.
he not?
I think so. But Wicks actually caught balls, which was the first in I feel like all season.
So Green Bay caught 12 passes, and Dan Campbell found it necessary to kick it or to go for it on his own 30. So against a team that could not move the ball well against him through the air, he decided to just give it to them in scoring range. So interesting. Their last second field goal wins it for the Lions 34-31. But Alex, you picked Detroit in this game and won. I picked Green Bay and lost. And the reason I had went Green Bay is I thought the Lions were too banged up and they were going to give up a lot of points. They did give up a lot of points, but they also scored a lot of points.
Well, and to your point, if they didn't go for it on their own 30, then this could have been a more lopsided game.
Exactly. And if there's a team that isn't the Packers where they're super young or inexperienced in Jordan Love's case, that's going to come back and bite them. Like a Philly team, that's going to come back and bite you every time.
All right. Do you have anything else to add on this one?
No, I think we're good with this matchup. And if you want to hop to the next one, we can.
Okay. We have the Falcons at Vikings next. The should have been revenge game for Kirk Cousins didn't work out because Kirk Cousins is a shell of himself at this point in the season. I don't know what he should do. I think he has 7 or 8 interceptions over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
I think no touchdowns either.
0 touchdowns as well. It is bad for Captain Kirk here.
It is. But there are some positives for the team here. Bijan has settled into the workout horse role that we always wanted under Arthur Smith, and it never happened. And it didn't happen for the first half of this year either, which made us think that we were in for a replay of last year with Tyler Algier getting a ton of work. But that's not the case so far. Mooney outperforms Pitts and London combined. So Mooney had a better performance than Pitts and London combined in this game. So I guess we have to do some data digging and some data looking to see if it's the receivers or the quarterback that are causing the slip off of stats here. But when you flip it over to the Vikings side, I saw Darnold threw for 5 touchdowns, 3 to Addison, 2 to Jefferson, and 5 touchdown performance. You don't see those every day from an NFL quarterback, let alone to Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and considering the Falcons early on in the season traded for a pass rusher and have the best safety in the league, you would have thought they'd be more competitive than this, but Sam Darnold tore them apart. Only had to complete 22 passes to do so. Aaron Jones also had a good game in this one. Cam Akers was okay as the backup in this scenario, but big win for Minnesota. Atlanta continues to spiral down and lose their chance at winning this division, which at the beginning of the year looked like a shoo-in for them.
Yeah, they have some serious competition now for the division. What do you do at quarterback right now if you're Atlanta?
If I'm Atlanta, my quarterback has thrown 8 interceptions and 0 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks. I spent the number 8 overall pick to take an older quarterback prospect. I'm going to consider putting Penix in. I would honestly do that at this point because Kirk, although he's put up yards in some of these games, is not good enough right now. So I need to see what the young guy can do at this point.
Absolutely. I think you got to fall one more game, though, out of the playoff race before you do it, because Kirk Cousins isn't easy to get rid of next year if they want to. So they might be stuck with Kirk Cousins for another year.
But
Do you
they play
think the Achilles has anything to do with this?
Oh, for sure. That and just general age.
Yeah.
But they play the Raiders and the Giants and then Washington and then they play the Panthers. This is the best 4-game stretch to play a rookie quarterback in that I can think of. So now is the time for them to switch to Penix and see what they have in him. I mean, you already have all the other rookie quarterbacks taken in the first round. All of them got to play, and the Falcons need to see what they have in Penix. And Penix is already 24. So it's not like they can afford to wait on him that much.
Yeah, I agree. They're just not in a great spot right now. And their weapons aren't producing outside of Bijan either. So that's a little concerning considering how many first round picks that they spent on weapons for the team, including a quarterback. All right, we both picked Minnesota. We both got it right. And do you want me to break down the Panthers at the Eagles here?
Go for it.
Panthers drop another close one, 22-16. Only Saquon Barkley shows up for the Philadelphia Eagles. The rest of the pass catchers and playmakers did not show up for this one, and apparently it has caused a little bit of a issue with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, and I know they had an issue last year, so it's interesting that it's rearing its ugly head, especially with how well they're performing. And then Jonathan Brooks, as we mentioned earlier, re-tears his knee, and so that puts Chuba Hubbard in the workhorse role for this game and the rest of the season. He has a very good game here. And the last good thing from the Panthers here was Xavier Legette drops the game winner with seconds left. So Bryce Young literally had them in game-winning position and threw a strike to Legette that would have been a touchdown had it not touched the ground. And I think, A, that gets the Panthers the better pick. And B, it shows that the Panthers can be competitive in every game that they're in because the Eagles are a great team. This was on the road also. So I don't know what happened to Bryce Young between his benching and Andy Dalton's car accident, but he is a different quarterback much more decisive, much more precision. He's just trusting himself now. And I don't know if it's coaching only, if it's him, or I don't know what got him out of that funk, but whatever it did, snapped him out real good.
I know Bryce Young's whereabouts the time of the car accident. That's what I want to know.
I can be his alibi.
This is the game that I thought it would be closer than the point spread. I think the point spread ended up being 14 points. And at the time we recorded, it was only 12 and a half, and we still said take the under. And sure enough, 6 point difference. If you took the under, you would have won there. I think Carolina's a much more competitive team. They get some key guys back from injury next year, and if they draft well, I think that they're right in a position where they can take this division, because it's, as we've seen from the Falcons and from Tampa, that it's not that daunting of a division.
I agree. I agree completely there. And it's nice to see the progression. And it's nice to go into an offseason and not be like, well, are we going to fire our coach? Or do we need to change this? And right now, there's some stability that's on the horizon for the Panthers, as long as we keep progressing.
All right, we can move on from your rainbows and sunshine with the outlook for the future Panthers to some gloominess with the Cleveland Browns losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Winston is quite the roller coaster, isn't he? He throws a bunch of touchdowns and then throws 2 more interceptions against a Steelers defense who is really good against the pass and near the bottom against the run for some crazy reason this year. With that said, Russell Wilson struggled in the first half of this one, stabilized himself, played a much stronger second half. Steelers always seemed like they were going to win this game, always under control, and that's without their top pass catcher in George Pickens being out, probably out next week as well. Browns just couldn't do anything, man. Like Nick Chubb just is not the same back right now. I mean, Jerry Jeudy did have a long catch and a touchdown, and Njoku had a touchdown. Not much else going for the Browns or Steelers in this one. Seemed like the Steelers just rode the run game for the most part. What were your takeaways here? We both called Pittsburgh. We
Yeah,
both were
I
right, by the way.
yeah, I agree with you here. Winston, another 2 picks. Does seem like his interceptions are the difference in some of these games. I know they were in the Broncos game. Like if he had not thrown 3 and he only threw 2, I think that the Browns had a good chance to win that game. But Jerry Judy's relevant with Winston, so there's that, and Njoku also is a target leader on the team, so I don't know how teams outside of like having a Brock Bowers or a George Kittle cannot start Njoku at this point. Like I feel like Njoku's a top 5 fantasy tight end option the rest of the season as long as Winston's in the lineup. And we have to mention with Wilson, Pickens is out. That's his general chuck it and hope that Pickens comes down with it. So he had to settle for Mike Williams, who is still new to the team. And flipping over to your question about Nick Chubb, do you think he's done, or do you think he'll be better next year, a year removed from that crazy surgery?
It's a little mixed because he'll be a year removed from that injury, as you just said, but he'll also be a year older, and he's already at the edge of the running back age cliff. And we don't know if this offensive line is going to add pieces and improve or not yet. It's really hard to tell. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be next year. I would guess that Chubb would be at least mildly better, but I don't know if he'll ever put up top fantasy numbers like he has in the past.
Yeah, I can agree with that, but we both picked Pittsburgh in this game and we both won. I feel like that's been a theme so far, except for the first game. I think you're undefeated so far, Alex.
Yeah, not until this next one. Tennessee versus Jacksonville. Both of these are sad, pitiful little teams. I picked Tennessee, you picked Jacksonville. In the first half, it looked like I was going to be right. Levis got knocked out for a certain point, and Jacksonville took a lead, and both teams looked pathetic all the way to the end. You ended up getting the win in this one. A 10-6 victory there. That's
Woo!
one of the saddest scores we've seen all season. Two teams tanking and trying not to look like they're tanking at the same time.
So speaking of tanking, it looks like Tank Bigsby, wrong Tank, finally passed ETN in rushing. Although ETN was involved in the passing game, so he does have some value in that side of it. But you're right, Levis versus Jones was a very bad matchup. Like, woof, for sure. And Pollard was underdrafted this year. I don't know how else to put it. Like, we thought that him and Spears would be a 50-50 split, but Pollard's taken this job and ran with it. And it's a little surprising, but it's just a good lesson to learn that, like, sometimes when a player is coming back from an injury, they need a full year to get over it. And that might be why he had the down year in Dallas last year. And now that he's over it, he's actually looking like an NFL running back again and a starter. So, bright spot on a bad team for me. And Brian Thomas continues to produce no matter who the quarterback is. That's good for him and good for his future.
All right. Not much else positive to say about this one. So let's move on to the next one, and that's the Raiders at the Buccaneers. We already talked about the Aiden O'Connell injury. Bucky Irving got knocked out early, almost cost me a victory there. But White had a good matchup. We both picked Buccaneers. We both got it right. They won 28-13. Mayfield was very up and down in this one. Looked pretty solid in this one. I don't know if I trust the Raiders' situational offense going forward because they're probably going to be behind a lot. But McCormick at least looks like he could be a legitimate number one running back going forward. So, especially for dynasty purposes, that would be nice. I don't really have that much to say about this matchup, Jeff.
Yeah, I think McCormick's the starter for the Raiders going forward in this year. I wouldn't go back to Abdullah or Madison. White went on IR, so that's one less back. Bucky Irving really did hurt me in a few leagues this week. I'm sure it hurt others out there as well. But that just opened up the door to Rachaad White getting the lion's share of the carries and actually having a really good day on the ground. But you did say Mayfield had an up and down game. I started him in fantasy in a league. It was not fun, and it came a little bit closer than it should have because he's a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year. So the 2 picks and only 2 touchdowns, I believe, really hurt me in that one. He might have had 3 touchdowns, 2 to McMillan and 1 to White.
Yeah, he had 3.
I forgot White had the receiving touchdown as well as the rushing touchdown, I believe, in this one.
I forgot to tell everyone to start Jalen McMillan last week. Oops.
You're going to get it right eventually, right?
I like Jalen McMillan. Like last
Me
year
too.
was a super receiver heavy draft, and there's a bunch of good ones that are starting to emerge now. So McMillan is someone who can play out there with Evans and Godwin when Godwin's healthy and really help this offense move. Tampa is right now, they're the number 1 in the division, and I think that they deserve it. And I think that they'll probably be the ones that make the playoffs because Falcons are stuttering. Saints are a distant third. The Panthers look good for the future, but probably won't get close to the 7 wins at this point.
Yeah, I can agree, but I think the Saints are going to bottom out after this year, so I think at the very least the Panthers will be number 3 next year. And I think Atlanta's in some trouble too that we can't foresee coming right now.
The Saints, how can they bottom out when they have Taysom Hill on their roster for next year?
Well, they also have Kendre Miller. But that's a great segue into our next matchup, the Saints at the Giants here. And your buddy, Derek Carr, David's brother, breaks his hand, but does enough to win this matchup 14-11 off of a blocked kick. I believe we looked up before this podcast that Graham Gano is making roughly $7 million per year and have a kick blocked where he can't win a game here. It's probably time to move off of Graham Gano here for the Giants. We have a Kendre Miller sighting, as I just mentioned. He scores a touchdown. So he's taking a little bit of Kamara work away. Kamara is going to be a tough fantasy playoff decision, especially without Derek Carr back there. And that's painful because he's been a great player the entire season. Underdrafted by far. Probably won't be underdrafted next year. but it's going to be tough to keep him in lineups on teams, and it's going to be tough to take him out of lineups because he got you to this spot and you feel like you need to start your studs, but that's not always the case. And I will fully cop to being wrong about Drew Lock for the Giants. He isn't it. Giants need to move to a new quarterback in the draft. Like, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Like, they need to start over from scratch with a brand new quarterback.
I completely agree there. And first, I'll just touch on the Saints running back situation. I think Taysom Hill being gone means more carries for Alvin Kamara and Kendry Miller. And now that Dennis Allen isn't there anymore, Kendry Miller's not in anybody's doghouse. He's finally released. He can finally be the running back that we wanted him to be, the complementary running back to Alvin Kamara. I think those two will be the focal point of the offense, as well as a deep threat in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and I think Juwan Johnson will also be a red zone target. So I think it will look more like a traditional offense rather than a gimmicky offense now that Taysom Hill's not there. And it really depends on which quarterback they end up playing, whether it's Jay Kaner, who I think will lean more towards short and intermediate passing, or Spencer Rattler, who would give them a more complete offense but be more erratic and turnover prone, but also higher upside. So very interesting how they're going to finish off the year. The Giants, the Drew Lock thing seemed almost predictable. I don't think that he was that good of a player, and he's kind of burned out, being passed around now. This is his third team. I don't know where he's going to be next. It's not necessarily a good offense to begin with, so I can't really put it all on him. I agree the Giants are going to move on to a new quarterback. I don't know whether it'll be someone they draft or whether they heavily target someone like Sam Darnold, who has had success this year, because they want to get someone for sure who's been successful. I don't know what direction they're going to go in, but it needs to be someone who didn't play for them over the past maybe 3 years. Try to go with someone completely different.
Hey, Daniel Jones is a free agent. I wonder if he'll go there.
I said someone who hasn't played for them in the past 3 years.
My bad.
But
My
I
bad.
like Neighbors. I like Theo Johnson. Tyrone Tracy has a lot of upside. I don't know if Devin Singletary is going to be there much longer, but they get a new quarterback. They fix their offensive line. They bring in some defensive pieces. It's going to be a completely different team.
Yeah, I think both teams have a realistic shot of looking completely different next year.
Yep.
So hopefully for the better, because we do root for good teams in the NFL because it makes fantasy more fun when there's more good teams. But obviously, I don't like the Saints for very obvious reasons. All right, we both picked the Saints, and we both got it right, Alex. So Jets at the Dolphins is our next game. What do you got from this kind of crazy high-scoring game?
We both picked Miami, and Miami did, in fact, win. Oddly, the Jets were winning for a good part of this game, so it looked a little close there. Eventually, Miami got the win 32-26. Miami played at home, so I figured it was a good chance to work out. I don't know what's going on with Miami's run game. It seems like Achane can't do anything on the ground. I know Mostert was hurt. Wright wasn't really that much more effective on only 2 carries. Wilson only got 1 carry. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if I'd want Tua to pass the ball 47 times like he did, but he did have 331 yards and 2 touchdowns, so that helps fantasy owners. Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if I want him to throw 39 times, but no turnovers for either guy. Not a lot of rushing game for either team. Kind of a weird game, and this one officially ended any chance at playoffs for the Jets. Miami's still in contention, but likely looking on the outside.
On life support
Tyreek Hill,
for sure.
Jalen Waddle, both had good weeks. Johnny Smith, good week. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just saying that their playoff hopes are on life support. They can't really lose a game to end the season. Allen and Davis were not great in Brees Hall's absence, but as you had mentioned here, a couple of these guys, so Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill, they all ate in this matchup, which I know that you're trying to convince a few people that Tyreek Hill is over the hill, no pun intended, right now, so that doesn't really help that conversation. And Achan, I'm a little surprised he had a down week without Mostert in the lineup. So it makes me wonder if we need to do some data digging on this. If Achan's biggest weeks came when Mostert was available and able to take some of the workload off of his plate. But we both picked the Dolphins. We both won after overtime, so not the game that we thought we were going to get, but result that we thought we were going to get. All right, now we go on to a couple of our misses of the week, and the first one is the Seahawks at the Cardinals. And so the Seahawks take a big division lead with a 30-18 victory in this matchup. Charbonnet looks good as the lead back, which makes me wonder what they're going to do next year with Walker and Charbonnet. ASN continues his ascension to Seattle's wide receiver 1. So that's really nice to see. The Cardinals punter was injured in this game, which did affect how they played the game a bit. And I think that was some of the reason why they weren't as good here, because they couldn't play the field position battle as well. But James Conner for the Cardinals did look good in this matchup. He just recently got an extension as well. So kind of blocks Trey Benson a little bit there for a bit.
Yeah, I think Trey Benson's a better dynasty asset for long term, but James Conner is the one who's getting it done right now. I think Charbonnet and Walker are going to be a committee until they decide to eventually part with one of them. So it's going to be pretty frustrating. But this big game for Charbonnet seemed to come out of nowhere. So it's not like he's been crushing it all year. So I don't know that they're going to go back to him as a primary. Because if you look, he's only had one other good game this entire season, and that was September 22nd against Miami, where he had 91 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Was Ken
And he
Walker
hasn't
out of
really,
that one too? He's been injured a
probably.
lot.
So I think he's firmly the number 2, but I think that they are a committee going forward. If Walker's out again, I would definitely continue to start Charbonnet.
Anything else to add to this matchup? It looks like the Seahawks are in the driver's seat for their division.
They are right now. I think the Rams actually are the team that's going to win this division, and we can segue over to the Rams' victory over the Bills. We had both picked the Bills. Bills might have won too if it wasn't for Sean McDermott and his game management at the end of the game. But we also talked about this being something that the Rams could upset the Bills, and that is what happened. So we took the L on this. It was a 44-2 game of the year type caliber matchup between the Rams and the Bills, and Stafford dueling with Josh Allen was probably the highlights of this. But this really came down to the last couple minutes of the game where Buffalo had the ball. They had the opportunity to just pass and not wear down the clock. So they had all 3 timeouts that they could use if needed. When the Rams got the ball back, they decided to run with Josh Allen twice. First time wore down the clock, so they had to call a timeout. Second time he got in, that left them 1 timeout down. They weren't able to stop the clock enough on the Rams, and they kind of screwed themselves. So Rams were able to run it out. Really epic game. Could be a Super Bowl potential matchup, because I could definitely see the Rams getting there. Jeff, what were your takeaways in this matchup?
They have the firepower to get there, but I kind of laugh a little bit at McDermott's aggression isn't just aggression, it's a stupid play call. And Dan Campbell's is aggressive, but not stupid at all. I just find the double standard of play calling interesting there.
Well, one's time management and one is aggressive 4th down play calling. It's interesting. They're both bad. One was worse than the other because it was in crunch time.
I'm sending this clip to Dan Campbell and his PR team to show that Alex has officially called him bad for the first
If
time.
if the going for it was like the last 2 minutes of the game on your own 30, it would probably be more understandable if they're down. Like,
Yeah.
I get that it's questionable, but to me, you hold McDermott as a higher standard of a coach than Dan Campbell, and McDermott
Oh, I do.
has been doing stuff like this his entire tenure as the head coach of the Bills, and don't feel like you criticize him nearly as much as Dan Campbell, who I think has only been a head coach for 3 years. And the first year was the talent on that team was not that great.
So, are you saying that I haven't been calling for McDermott's head here in Buffalo the last 2 years?
Not this season. This season, you're like, he's a great coach.
Well, they also only had 3 losses since they switched offensive coordinators last year, so they were on like a 20-3 streak. So now it's 20-4, and they lost it because of his coaching. So now I'm back on the, well, is this really the best that they can do for Josh Allen? I guess. And it's not that he's a bad coach. I think he should be an NFL coach. I just don't think he's a Super Bowl winning coach. And I think that's the
Yeah,
difference here.
but I think very few are. It's like, can you actually do better? Or is this the best you can do for now? Kind of situation.
Well, when Brian Dayball is free and can come back and be with Josh Allen.
Oh.
But Josh Allen did work on securing his first NFL MVP this weekend with 6 touchdowns, 3 rushing, 3 through the air, no turnovers, and Puka, Cup, Amari Cooper, and Khalil Shakir all had big days through the air. And then the Rams. So this is the way you beat the Bills, and this is why I think the Lions will beat the Bills next week. That's a spoiler for everyone that's listening. I've already told Alex this, but the Rams were able to get and keep Kyron Williams a big piece of the game. And if you run against the Bills, you can win. So the Bills need to prove that they can beat good ground game teams because they're going to struggle against the Ravens. The Ravens are the only team that I have earmarked, and even the Texans. That's 2 of their losses this year against heavy ground game winning teams. And the Texans win whenever they can run with Mixon. So it's proving to be a weak spot on the Buffalo Bills because all 3 of their losses are against really good running teams, or teams that ran the ball really good against them, I should say.
I will say Amari Cooper finally looks like he emerged on this offense. And
He was injured.
so I think him tossing that touchdown to Allen made him Allen's new best friend, and Allen peppered him with 14 targets. And it looks like Puka Nakua is the number 1 going forward for the Rams over Cooper Kupp, which is very frustrating for me because I still like Cooper Kupp and I want him to succeed. So I wish there was more balance between those two, but that's what it looks like going forward.
All right. But both those teams have arrows up, even though the Bills lost, and I think they might lose 2 in a row. I still think that they'll be contenders towards the postseason, and I think the Rams have enough firepower to do the same. So, as you had mentioned earlier, they pose a threat to the Lions. So we'll see. I do think Sean McVay is a Super Bowl winning coach, so he already has won one. So I think that he is one of those Super Bowl winning coaches that we were talking about earlier, and he outcoached McDermott in this game.
I agree with that.
So that's why I would be really worried if I was Dan Campbell and the Lions get outcoached by Sean McVay.
All right. Let's move over to another brutal matchup here. The Chicago Bears lost to the Finners bigly in this one. 49ers won 38-13. I picked Chicago because I thought the 49ers were banged up and coaching change. This coaching change did not work at all. In fact, it was miserably bad. 49ers had a great game despite Isaac Guerendo going down. So a third running back for them. Deebo Samuel has not been able to get going basically all season. It looks like it's the George Kittle and Juwan Jennings show for the 49ers. Bears, it's hard to know which wide receiver to go for because they got relatively similar stats and looks, and even DJ Moore got the most targets, but Rome Odunze got 2 touchdowns, so he was the only one worth starting this week. So I don't know what to do about that other than, you just take your gamble with them going forwards. But brutally bad game for Chicago. San Francisco keeps their playoff hopes on life support. I think that they are the 3rd most likely team now to make the playoffs in their own division. So I would rank it I think the Rams have the best chance based off the end of the year schedule, then the Seahawks, then the 49ers, then the Cardinals. That's how I'd rank it for them. And Chicago is definitely last in a very tough division because all three of their rivals look like they're all going to the playoffs.
Yeah, they'll need a killer coaching hire in the offseason in order to start competing in that division for Chicago. Niners, another hurt running back. I know last year McCaffrey was healthy the whole year, but if we look over the last 4 to 5 seasons, how many injuries have the 49ers had at running back that has caused them to continue to cycle running backs in and out of the lineup? I think it's a little disconcerting, like Elijah Mitchell being one of them, Matt Breida being another one of them, Mostert was one of them. Like the last 4 to 5 seasons, they've struggled keeping one running back in a lineup. Jordan Mason this year, Christian McCaffrey this year, like now Isaiah Grendo, who injury isn't that bad. He should be back this year. I think playing Thursday is going to be really tough. So playing on a short week. So they're either going to start Patrick Taylor or Israel. His last name is escaping me right now, but they claimed him off of waivers. What?
Is it Israel Adonijah?
Maybe. But they scooped him from the Jets after the Jets waived him. Although that was rumored since the preseason that he was going to be waived, and it took him until like week 12 to actually waive him. Interesting bit of news there. But Caleb Williams does seem like he was scaled back, and it seems like this new offensive coordinator that's been working with Caleb Williams for a few weeks scaled him back in this matchup. Don't really like that right now, especially in a game here where they probably needed to win this one. I don't think that this coach here is going to be the permanent coach, because you know how I feel about interim coaches. They should never, ever be hired as the regular coach unless the regular coach has like a health scare and has to step down.
This one has not done anything to do himself any. He's not done himself any favors, I should say. So
he made the offense look better. 2 weeks.
Not this game.
No, but then they regressed as soon as he's the guy.
Yeah, that's fair.
2 promotions in a year seems like too much for this guy. This guy's over his skis. And as far as the 49ers go, Purdy bounced back out of the snow. So he had like 90 some yards passing against Buffalo. Put that in his rear view. And then I don't know if you saw any of this game, but watching it live, Kittle felt like he was a big, big presence in this game. And same with Juwan Jennings as well with 2 touchdowns. So I didn't start him in the league that I have him, but I might going forward.
All right, now we can move to the 2 primetime games. It definitely seems like the Sunday afternoon games are the ones I'm weakest at for whatever reason. Anyway,
you just don't like
the primetime games.
1 o'clock West Coast time games. You're like Kirk Cousins. You just can only show up for 1 o'clock games.
1 o'clock Eastern?
Yep.
Yeah. They're pretty good with the Thursday ones, too. All right, let's do the Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, we both picked the Chiefs, and the Chiefs always find a way to win their games despite almost never scoring over 20 points. Really, I've looked into the script, and I've seen all the crazy stuff that they put in there for the Chiefs to win. Let's see. This matchup, the Chiefs won 19-17, I believe. It's the same score as the Chiefs versus Raiders last week. So Chargers did as good as the Raiders, minus their number 1 running back, minus their number 1 wide receiver. So I mean, I guess they gave it the old college try, but not quite good enough to beat Kansas City. Kansas City, not much bright spots other than DeAndre Hopkins getting a touchdown. It was evenly split between all these receiving options. Isaiah Pacheco looks like he is resecured the top rushing role for this team with Kareem Hunt as the primary backup. Gus Edwards is not doing enough, in my opinion, to be the running back for the Chargers. He got a touchdown, but pitiful rushing attempts for the most part. Kamani Vidal looks like he should be taking the lead soon, in my opinion. Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston did okay in the absence of McConkey, but the Chargers offense is missing a lot of firepower. A lot of firepower.
I would agree. I would say both teams are missing a lot of firepower overall.
The Chiefs have the firepower. They just need, I don't know if they need offensive line or what, so that they can
Well,
get it
they're
to the
missing their
firepower.
Hollywood Browns of the world and their Rasheed Rices of the world. Like, they lost a lot also this year. I don't think Pacheco is necessarily 100%. He took another step forward in his recovery this week. He has a plate in his ankle still, so I mean, in my head, I can't even imagine it.
Well, they have a first round pick in Worthy. They have Travis Kelce. They have DeAndre Hopkins. They have Juju Smith Schuster. Hollywood Brown, I think, is being activated this week, so he'll be back shortly. They'll get Rasheed Rice back next year. But still, like, they have a lot of firepower on the Chiefs. Their offense just looks terrible.
Yeah, so we were just talking about the Bills at the Rams being one of the games of the year. This was one of the games of the year too, and it was a low-scoring game. The Chiefs and the Chargers will always play each other very closely, and I think this rivalry is only going to get better and better as Harbaugh gets some more talent into the building. All right, we both picked them. They both won. And I know you're big on Vidal here, but I think without Dobbins, this run game is pretty bad, pretty pathetic. And without the run game, they were never going to win this matchup, I don't believe. And also without Ladd, I do stand by that. If Ladd McConkey had played in this matchup, I think they would have won. And I told you that on last week's podcast. I didn't change it because Ladd was ruled out the day of, but I think if they had one more piece, they could have potentially won the matchup. Chiefs are being held together with duct tape and silly string, so they're somehow keeping it together with just very minimal objects. MacGyver over there.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're finding ways to win ugly, but they are winning.
yeah. Speaking of winning ugly, the Bengals at the Cowboys, the Bengals win 27-20, but it took a last couple of minute touchdown by Jamar Chase and a muffed block punt by the Cowboys for the Bengals to win this matchup. This should have been a lot easier of a matchup for the Bengals to win. So it's a little concerning that it took them as long and as much effort to win this game. You would have thought that they would have been able to put up more than 27 points, but they were not. Lamb has a decent game in this one as well, but the Cowboys decided to play T. Higgins a lot more close to the vest than Jamar Chase in this one, and Burrow was like, if you're just going to give me Chase open every time, I'm just going to keep throwing to him. So it's turned into a Jamar Chase game. I think Jamar Chase might be the highest paid receiver in the league after this year. I can't imagine a team that's well run. So we'll use like the Eagles have a pretty good like player development and GM. Can't imagine a team like that allowing a Jamar Chase to go into a contract year. Like they would have already had him signed and moving forward. So the fact that the Bengals can't figure this out shows that they're not one of the premier franchises in the NFL.
Oh, they got one of the poorer owners, but yeah, I agree. They should have locked Chase down already and should already be working on Higgins, or they should have been working on a trade to trade him for a receiver that's under contract or higher picks or something.
Yeah, it's baffling. Their method has no madness or reason.
Yeah, well, it's the same as the Cowboys. Cowboys literally did the same thing with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And now I don't know how many of y'all stayed up to actually watch the game Monday night, but Parsons is not a happy camper watching his fellow Edge get hurt, not having a contract of his own, and the Cowboys losing and having a miserable season. He walked off the field, and I don't think he shook anybody's hands. He's done. I think he's done with the Cowboys. I think they might tag him and trade him, but he is not returning to the Cowboys, in my opinion.
Well, and that's one of their saving graces is that they're going to be able to get a boatload for him. So they will be able to start to restock the cupboards that are very bare right now. I expect at least one first round pick back for Parsons, probably even two.
Well, what's cutting against them is a lot of teams view this as a very edge-heavy draft. So a lot of teams might think it's cheaper to just take a stab at one of the guys in this draft class rather than give up a lot for Parsons, who the Cowboys would likely have to let go at some point anyway.
Yeah. It is cheaper, but does not mean that it'll be better. So they have a known product in Micah Parsons, and then they're taking a lottery choice on a college prospect. So there will be a GM out there that takes the known commodity.
It might be a weird situation where they have to trade him to like the Commanders, to Dan Quinn, who's familiar with him, but is a division rival because they have the best offer.
Yeah, I still think the Commanders really, so they couldn't trade their first round. They need a receiver to go opposite of McLaurin. Like, Noah Brown is not a number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. Like, which does even, it speaks to Jaden Daniels being able to do this with Zach Ertz, who is 3 years removed from a productive year, and Noah Brown is his number 2 wide receiver. It speaks a lot to Jaden Daniels and his early growth, in my opinion.
Well, one thing I've always said about Jaden Daniels is he's a really good deep ball thrower, and McLaurin, in my opinion, is a very good deep ball runner. So they're a perfect fit that way.
Yeah, so they'll need to go find another one, play opposite.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this episode. So that does it for another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody.